What we've witnessed President Trump accomplish over the last few days has been nothing short of remarkable. We are now 3.5 years into the war between Russia and Ukraine, a brutal conflict that has claimed hundreds of thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives and cost trillions of dollars throughout his second term. And thanks to President Trump's efforts, we finally have movement after years of deadly gridlock. On Friday, as you all know, many of you were there, President Trump hosted Russian President Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska, for a bilateral meeting. This was the first time President Putin has been to the United States since 2015, and the first time he has met with an American president in years. President Putin publicly confirmed what President Trump has said all along. The war between Russia and Ukraine never would have started in the first place if President Trump were in office. This was always obvious to any person with a shred of common sense. Just look at what took place during the last 4 administrations. Under George W. Bush, Russia invaded Georgia. Under Barack Obama, Russia took Crimea. Under Joe Biden, Russia invaded Ukraine. But under President Trump, Russia did not invade nor take anything. President Trump is the only president this century, Republican or Democrat, who has held Russia in check and ensured peace in Europe. That's because Russia has always greatly respected President Trump and his peace through strength foreign policy approach. But overall, the bilateral talks in Alaska were very productive, and multiple key points were agreed to between the two leaders that truly opened up the door for Phase 2 discussions, which took place yesterday here at the White House, within 48 hours of that meeting in Anchorage, I may add. As you all know, there were many European leaders here, as well as Ukrainian President Zelensky. They all traveled here to meet with President Trump to maintain the momentum and work toward a lasting peace. Across the board, every leader credited President Trump for his decisive leadership that has reignited the dialogue in hopes of finally bringing this war to a peaceful conclusion. 2 quotes in particular capture the progress that was made and the optimism moving forward. Finnish President Alexander Stubb said, "I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have had in the past 3.5 years. Again, that is the president of Finland, a country that shares a border with Russia. That's what we call the President Trump effect. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte also summed it up well. Without President Trump, this deadlock with Putin would not have been broken. He is the only one who could do this. In other news, on the home front, President Trump's efforts to make D.C. safe again are working. There have been a total of 465 arrests since the start of this operation on Thursday, August 7th. Last night, there were a total of 52 arrests, including the arrest of an illegal alien MS-13 gang member with convictions for DWI and drug possession. Thanks to President Trump's leadership and the outstanding work of both federal and local law enforcement, dangerous gang members like the one picked up last night will not be allowed on the streets of our nation's capital. Other arrests last night included assault with a deadly weapon for stabbing, parole violation for robbery, murder, outstanding warrant for attempted murder, assault on federal law enforcement officer, and felony assault. 4 more homeless encampments were also removed during yesterday's reporting period. To date, a total of 48 homeless encampments have been cleared in Washington, D.C. by multi-agency teams. MPD patrol units are actively working with city officials to locate and clear additional encampments and remove homeless residents off of Washington's streets. And despite fake narratives from the media, again, a significant number of the arrests have been in high-crime areas of D.C. In fact, nearly half of all of the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in Wards 7 and 8, the 2 wards that have the highest number of violent crime, as well as homicides and assaults with dangerous weapons last year. So while Democrats continue to coddle violent criminals, President Trump and this administration are focused on putting them behind bars and unapologetically standing up for the safety of law-abiding American citizens.
When it comes to the security guarantees, what is the current status of that? I know the president earlier today mentioned boots on the ground would be UK, France, Germany possibly, but unequivocally said no U.S. troops on the ground. but U.S. coordination. Can you elaborate on that, and what would the red lines be?
Sure. Well, you got to the heart of what I was going to say to all of you today on security guarantees, which is the president has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies. The president understands security guarantees are crucially important to ensure a lasting peace, and he has directed his national security team to coordinate with our friends in Europe and also to continue to cooperate and discuss these matters with Ukraine and Russia as well.
And then just last question real quick on this. Regarding some of the funding, we're hearing questions about another round of weapon sales or possibly a round of U.S. purchases of Ukrainian drones. Will that money be funded by the U.S. taxpayers? Are we finally going to see an end to the U.S. taxpayer-funded, seemingly endless mandate for these foreign wars?
Well, the president is very sensitive to the needs of the American taxpayer, and immediately upon entering office back in January, he made it very clear that we're not going to continue writing blank checks to fund a war very far away, which is why he came up with the very creative solution to have NATO purchase American weaponry because it is the best in the world, and then to backfill the needs of the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people and their military. So that's the solution the president has came up with. We'll continue to see that forward. As for any additional sales, I'll have to defer you to the Department of Defense.
What has President Trump learned that tells him that Vladimir Putin would be willing to make a deal for him, for President Trump?
Well, the president has learned a lot, which is part of the reason he opened up this dialogue. The previous administration, who oversaw the beginning of this war, refused to talk. And President Trump has always said, in order to learn, in order to move the ball forward with diplomacy and towards peace, you have to have open dialogue. And so that's why the president has had several conversations by phone and, of course, an in-person meeting last Friday with President Putin. He also has talked to President Zelensky dozens of times, had him here at the White House yesterday, and he's understanding what both sides want, what both sides are going to have to give up. And he has always said, in order to get a good deal, both sides are going to have to walk away a little bit unhappy. So he continues to learn a lot throughout these conversations, which is why we've seen progress from both sides. And I would also just add, when it comes to learning and moving the ball forward, look at how both Russia and Ukraine have actually talked directly for the first time in many years, thanks to the efforts of this president and this administration.
Specifically for President Trump, though,
the president is using the might of American strength to demand that respect from our allies, our friends, our adversaries all around the world. And we've seen that not just lead to progress with Russia and Ukraine, but also we've seen it in the closing of 7 global conflicts around the world as well. We've seen it with the release of hostages in Gaza. You've seen it with the end of the conflict between India and Pakistan, which could have resulted in a nuclear war if we had not had a president who believed in the strength and the leverage that comes with the job of being the president of the United States of America.
Yes. And then also, how long should people here in the district anticipate the National Guard to be on the ground patrolling the streets?
I think the president, as you know, and this administration, he came to this briefing room with members of his cabinet to lay out the rationale and the reasoning for federalizing the National Guard here in Washington, D.C., and for our work with the Metropolitan Police Department to make our district safer. We've seen violent crime has taken the lives of far too many residents here in our nation's capital, and the president wants to make it safe again. And as for the coordination efforts, this interagency team is meeting and talking daily. In fact, there's a meeting taking place right now in the West Wing with members of the interagency task force to continue to discuss not just the National Guard deployment, but also how we can continue to remove public safety threats off of the streets of Washington, which, as the numbers I just showed you prove, they are doing every single night. I will just reiterate, 465 total arrests and counting since the start of this operation. I believe 11 or 12 days ago. I'll have to check the calendar, but those are pretty remarkable results. If not for this task force and their high level of coordination and the leadership of this president, there would have been 465 more violent criminals on the streets of this capital that you all live in every day. So I think we should all be very grateful for that.
First, I was wondering if you could clarify something President Trump said. He mentioned getting rid of the slums where criminals live. Was he talking about tents or permanent residential buildings? And then the mayor has expressed an interest in clarifying how much of a focus illegal immigration enforcement as part of this crackdown. Can you say anything about that?
First, when it comes to what you said and the president said, the slums of Washington, D.C., he's referring to the most dangerous communities, neighborhoods, and streets in this city where, unfortunately, violence has ravaged these communities and taken the lives of, again, far too many law-abiding D.C. residents. We know on July 5th of this year, just more than a month ago, a 3-year-old beautiful young girl was shot and killed in her car with her family in one of these communities, which is why there has been a surge, despite what many of you have been falsely reporting. And I believe it was the Washington Post who put out a map claiming it to be fact-based when it was just based on, I don't know, accounts that they've heard on the street, not actual statistics and data. So we went and reconfigured the numbers, and as I said, nearly half of all the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in wards 7 and 8 in the District of Columbia, where we know, excuse me, there's the highest rate of crime. So we'll continue to do that. And what was your second question, Stephen?
Legal immigration, how much of a focus that is?
Yeah, look, I mean, the focus is to make D.C. safe and beautiful and to remove public safety threats and violent criminals from our streets. If federal law enforcement, with the help of the Metropolitan Police Department, come across illegal aliens, of course, we are going to abide by this administration's policy of law and order, and we are going to remove illegal criminals from our nation's capital. They will be detained and deported, just like they are in every other community across the country.
How long is Trump willing to wait and operate in good faith for Putin to actually arrange a meeting before he intervenes?
Look, the president has put tremendous public pressure to bring this war to a close. He's taken actions, as you've seen, sanctions on India and other actions as well. He's made himself very clear that he wants to see this war end, and he has scoffed at the ideas of others that have been raised that we should wait another month before any meeting takes place. The president wants to move, and he wants to bring this war to an end as quickly as possible.
Can you walk us through why another deputy FBI director was named? Does Trump have any displeasure with how the FBI has been being run to date?
Andrew Bailey is extremely qualified. As you know, he's been serving with honor as the Attorney General of Missouri, and he's been brought on as another set of very credible and experienced hands to work alongside the current Deputy Director, Dan Bongino, under the leadership of the Director, Kash Patel, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And the FBI has been doing a tremendous job. We've seen their agents out on the streets as part of this interagency task force here in Washington. But the crime that they've been stopping here in Washington, they've been doing this for 7 months all across the country. In fact, there's been 19,000 arrests by the FBI nationwide. That's more than double last year in the same time period. Of those, 1,600 arrests were for violent crimes against children. 4,000 child victims have been rescued by this FBI under this current leadership. 1,000 arrests from investigations of foreign terrorist organizations. There's been 1,500 kilos of fentanyl seized. 6,300 kilos of meth have been seized. And 3 of the top 10 most wanted have been arrested so far. Not a single one of the individuals on the top 10 most wanted list were arrested under the previous administration. We've arrested 3 in 7 months. So when you're actually working and enforcing law and order, you need all hands on deck. And so we look forward to welcoming Andrew Bailey to this new post. Jack?
Which of the half-dozen peace deals that the president's pulled off would you say he's the most proud of?
That's a good question, Jake. I'll leave that to the president to answer. I think he's proud of all of the peace deals that he's been able to achieve. You saw the president of Armenia and the head of Azerbaijan both at the White House just a couple of weeks ago. The president, I know, very much enjoyed spending time with them and helping to bring that conflict to an end. He very much enjoyed his time with leaders of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo in the Oval Office, talking to them about bringing that decades-long war to an end. India and Pakistan. He used trade in a very powerful way as leverage to bring that conflict to an end. So I know he's very proud of all of these achievements, and I know he's very honored to serve as the President of the United States and to restore peace around this world.
The President says that he's starting a movement to eliminate mail-in voting, but states administer elections, not federal authorities. So can you provide any more details about how the White House plans to eliminate that?
The White House continues to work on this, and when Congress comes back to Washington, I'm sure there will be many discussions with our friends on Capitol Hill and also our friends in state legislatures legislatures across the country to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of the vote for the American people. And I think Republicans generally, and the president generally, wants to make it easier for Americans to vote and harder for people to cheat in our elections. And it's quite mind-boggling that the Democrat Party could stand in opposition to common sense. He wants to ensure election integrity. There were great efforts that were made in 2024. I won't get ahead of myself for Hatch Act reasons to get ahead for the next election, but I can assure you this is a priority for the president.